Good morning, everyone. We're going to reconvene an open session. We'll begin with commissioners' reports and comments. Vice President Baker, would you begin, sir?
Last week, I'd just like to thank the governor and his staff for coming to Washington County and just sharing their thoughts, and it was just awesome to have them here. And I mean, they had a lot of staff here. The governor was very appreciative of what's going on in Washington County, and I would just like to just say thanks to the governor and his staff for keeping Washington County as their #1 county in the state.
Thank you very much.
And the rumor has it that governor, after his term is up,
Move here.
he's going to be moving, residing in Washington County. That's just a rumor now.
He needs a realtor.
Anything else, sir? Mr. Commissioner
Thank you.
Kiefer?
Same thing. I think there's lots of fanfare last Thursday for Washington County. It was a good day between the Park Service and everyone that attended. Delightful Dairy having their ribbon cutting, and our 2 federal senators touring the Museum of Fine Arts for the first time. I think we had a lot to showcase here in the county, and that's I think that's a good thing, something we should all be proud of.
Thank you. Commissioner Meimer-Schmidt?
First thing, I'd like to congratulate the Hagerstown Pony League. I don't know if everybody knows, but they were in the Pony League World Series. Even though they did lose and they're already out, it's still a privilege to be invited to the game. So congratulations to them. It's a good honor. The second is just to kind of bring back up, I know we talked about it probably a month or 2 ago, but if we've had any looks into the HR benefits and ups and downsides of HR going under the legal. So if we could come back up with that. So.
Yeah, we can do some exploratory.
There'll be an agenda item in the future. Is that what you want?
What other places do with that?
Yeah, and just
with you.
Yeah, just what the ups and downs are. If it's if it's potential, if it makes sense, or if it doesn't.
Court, anything else?
That's it.
Commissioner Wagner?
I'm going to read the newspaper today a little bit, I think. Julie, don't look here. It's nothing bad. I swear it's not. I saw in there, and we were briefed on it, good things are happening. Project Snowman, which was basically the Radio Shack building being renovated, $9.2 million, I think it said, and 40-some employees. And anybody know why it was called Project Snowman? Because I do, but nobody raised their hand, so I'll tell you. It's a roofing, I guess, a roofing supply, and the membrane they give away is white. That's why they called it Project Snowman. I just figured that out. And then C&O Canal, the under commissioners mentioned it. That was pretty good. Y'all need to go down there and take a ride on one of them launch boats up and down the new aqueduct, because that was for the aqueduct and the restoration of that and the headquarters, the groundbreaking. But those launch boats, I hear, are going to be free. We had a 20-year-old captain on there. She did a good job. And then we had a tour guide. I think that's probably standard procedure. I'll tell you, it's interesting from the engineering point of it, how they did that. I mean, Rob was oohing and ahhing when he was talking about engineering. It was pretty cool. But anyway, y'all need to get down there. That was some kind of a project. But good things happening. Try to concentrate on all the good things. But I did like that fact they're going to do something with that old Radio Shack building out there. I think that's all I have.
Thank you. I have several things. We just received an email from Leitersburg Volunteer Fire Company, and they want us to consider putting a blacktop apron on. I think Commissioner Wagner suggested, could we do a cost estimate and have a value judgment on whether we want to do that or not? Mr. Slick, would that be okay?
Yeah, we've offered to have a cost estimate done. I don't know if it falls under the criteria of others, but we can certainly bring that back.
Yeah, we'll proceed with that. Second, Washington County and the United States lost a true World War II hero the past week. Staff Sergeant Air Force Jack Holland passed away. He's a true blue and blue through Williamsporter. He was a tail gunner on a B-17 bomber who flew 34 missions. And a little history that I was given on that, most of those tail gunners left after 25, but because the casualty rate was well over 50, he was required to stay and serve for 9 more missions. 5-6 oak clusters awarded to him for different missions, and his funeral was held yesterday, so we should all hold him and his family in honor for his service and sacrifice to his country. I also attended the Crumpy's Donut Run, and they donate all the proceeds to the Wounded Warriors Fund. That was probably the largest event they've had so far. So that event, helping out our Wounded Warriors, continues to grow. And yes, it was a very proud day in Williamsport with the C&O Canal Aqueduct and the groundbreaking for the headquarters. Mayor Williamsport mentioned that he'd been waiting on this day for 45, and I had to remind him some of us are a little older, and we've been for 45 years, and some of us are a little older, we've been waiting for 55 and 60 years. And it was a glorious day because we've always heard stories that we were going to ride a boat or see that aqueduct repaired. And now keeping the National Park headquarters in Washington County, making us the capital of the National Park Service for the canal, was a true benefit. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier when former Mayor McLeaf and I were talking many years ago about this, we mentioned how the canal was once part of an economic engine for Washington County, hauling freight, coal back and forth on the canal, with many years in between just being for biking and hiking. Now with the aqueduct being restored, the headquarters being restored, the canal once again is being an economic engine for tourism and other business development. So one would say history is repeating itself in Williamsport. And also kudos to the governor for attending these events and taking the time to go out to Delightful Dairy, owned by the Long family, who's owned that farm for 5-6 generations, early 1800s. That family has owned that farm. My dad is 96. He told me about 80 years ago he was hunting rabbits back there in them rock breaks. So that's how long that family has been in business. And with the new generation of Longs taking over and making the sacrifice and risk to expand their business into a new avenue, taking a risk on their farm and investing their time and money into a new project is noteworthy. And I like to thank the Long family and for the governor for paying attention to such a minor project, but large in the hearts of many. So that concludes my report. Thank you for listening. Next, I would like to begin with reports from county staff. Please come forward if you have a report. Susan?
Good morning. Susan McCannon, Director, Office of Grant Management. I have just wanted to update you on 2 recent hotel rental tax awards. This is for information purposes. There's no vote needed, but wanted you all to be aware. We did receive a request for assistance for the aqueduct headquarters, aqueduct rewatering and the headquarters groundbreaking that was last August. And $7,000 was approved to assist with that event. And there was also support from the town of Williamsport, from the National Park Services, and from the Convention and Visitors Bureau as well. In addition, an award was approved for $2,000 for the Antietam Velo Club for the upcoming Hagerstown Cyclocross Challenge event. That event will be held September 8th. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would there be any other staff with comments? Please come forward.
Commissioners, I have an item.
Okay, does anything else? Okay. If not, Kirk, please go ahead. I saw someone flinch out there. I thought you were coming forward.
Commissioners, going to request permission to take the building excise tax ordinance to public hearing. There are some housekeeping changes that need to be made to it. One is regarding the elimination of the School Advisory Design Committee, because as you know, the enabling legislation for that that was taken away by the General Assembly. The other item is a request to add fire and rescue companies as an exemption from the excise tax, because essentially the county ends up taking money from one pocket and putting it into another when those types of facilities are charged with excise tax. And the third is regarding a sunset provision regarding a change in use for certain uses that has recently expired, and staff would like to keep that in place for a while longer and continue to study whether it's should be removed or whether it should be remain. So in the interest of expediting this and getting the issue to public hearing as soon as possible, we'd ask for your permission to go ahead and be able to schedule the public hearing before the board.
Commissioners, consensus to move forward?
And just a public hearing during our commissioner time, during the day, or
During the regular meeting, yes, yeah, just the same as on any other ordinance.
Would that be in 2 weeks?
It'll be a little longer than that because we have to have some time to get the ad in the newspaper and get the
I just
our
didn't know
notice. But
what the time frame was.
Okay, I see nod, so consensus to move forward.
thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
Administrator Slocum?
Thank you, sir. Mako is this week, and various staff will be down at Mako. We will be talking to Secretary Ron, as well as, I believe, some members of the delegation, GHC, and possibly the Chamber, put together a booklet for the Secretary regarding our interstate requests, both 81 and 70, and hopefully requesting additional assistance on the Emergency Operations Center that has some potential here. So that will be an ongoing discussion at the state level. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Montelschmidt for the connection to some federal highway liaison who we will also be talking with about that. Also like to thank Hadley Farms, who will be donating a great deal for the Taste of Maryland, which will be presented at Mako. So staff, Susan Small worked closely with her and Hadley Farms to make that happen. So thanks to both of them. And as far as the cost estimate for Leitersburg paving, bless you,
Thank you.
that was dispatched to, after trying to make some phone calls, to Scott Hobbs, and he is out this week, but we can certainly get a cost estimate back to you for that. Yep.
Thank you. Anything else?
I can just briefly wanted to update the commissioners to let you know that staff here at the county did meet with Smith Elliott Kearns and Company, the firm that's been contracted to do the accounting and review services with the fire and EMS companies. We did have a meeting a few weeks ago, drafted some documents, and an email went out to all of the fire and EMS companies to inform them of an informational meeting to be held the evening of September 5th. So I did want to just inform the commissioners that we're progressing forward on those items.
Thank you.
Jeff, I can step in. I forgot this one request, but we talked about it before. But if we could start looking and get a plan for the minimum wage impact and how that's going to be affecting us looking out 5 years, saying this is what we're going to be looking at with the raises, because we know that that's coming down the road and that's going to be a cost increase. And it could be, as we heard, if we kept the same rate and wage scale, which I know we're not going to, it would be $30 million. But we've got to step in front of this and see what that's going to cost us and how we're going to do it. And I think we need to look all the way out to when the minimum wage is 15, and that being our grade 1, step 1, and where do we apply, go from there.
Okay, sure.
Any other comments from staff? Seeing none, we're a little early for citizens' participation, but we'll move forward with that. And if I see more people come in at 10:25, commissioners will return. So is there anyone here currently here for citizens' participation? If so, come forward and state your name. Seeing none, through our disabled, Mr. Hicks, are you coming forward?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is the appropriate time.
We do have you on the agenda later,
Okay.
so either way. All right.
I'll get my courage up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hicks. Seeing no more any citizens' participation, would the disabled veterans representatives come forward and introduce yourself at the table there?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dennis Jadeborough. I'm the current commander of the Ralph Tagg Chapter 14, Hagerstown, Maryland. And with me is J.R. Arnold.
And I'm the past commander, so we work hand in hand.
And we're here to gratefully get the proclamation for our Forget-Me-Not Drive, which begins in September. And the county commissioners have been grateful every year to give us the proclamation, which we use in our fundraising in the community. And what we do is we put the proclamation out at our tables when we're fundraising so that they know that our efforts in behalf of veterans is approved by the county and, of course, the city of Hagerstown.
Okay, no more report. We'll have a proclamation for you.
JR, I bought a few vehicles from you over back in the old days, didn't I? JR,
What's that?
over here. Didn't I buy some vehicles from you way back in the old days, didn't I?
35 years worth,
Yeah.
22 in the Navy and 35 selling cars.
And after we do this, we're going to pose for pictures. Oh, we'll get you right here. Yes, sir. First of all, I know on behalf of the commissioners, it's an honor to have you in our room today. And thank you for your service to our country. Very much appreciated. On behalf of the Board of County Commissioners, Disabled American Veterans Organization, Forget Me Not Month, September 2019. Whereas the Disabled American Veterans Organization offers free services to disabled veterans and their families in filing claims for government benefits, as well as the resolution of problems regarding employment, health care, and counseling. And whereas the Disabled American Veterans Organization strives to respond to emergency needs arising in the family of many disabled veterans. And whereas the community wishes to express a deep and continuing sense of gratitude to those disabled veterans who gave so much to protect and preserve our way of life. And whereas the Disabled American Veterans Organization has chosen September 2019 for its annual Forget Me Not Drive in Washington County, and pledged that all contributions will be utilized for disabled veterans and their families in our community. Now therefore, we, the Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, Maryland, do hereby recognize September 2019 as Forget Me Not Month and encourage all citizens to join in and support those who've given so freely to protect and defend the rights and freedom for all of us. Awarded this 13th day of August, 2019. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. There you go. All right, and let's move up front, and commissioners, maybe we get a group picture with yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next would be the certificate presentation for the 2019 Cultural Exchange Mentoring Program. Mr. Hicks, is everyone here that you need? Well, would you come forward to the table and introduce yourself or any staff, and we have some presentations afterwards.
Good morning. My name is Brittany Higgins. I'm the Public Relations Coordinator here, and our department has worked closely with Mr. Hicks in his mentoring program. This is the second summer that I've personally been involved with. It's the third overall, the second I've done this. So essentially, Mr. Hicks has this mentoring program, which he can talk further about, and then he reaches out to the county where we organize essentially a tour of Washington County for these young men sitting behind us. So this year, they did a tour of Hagerstown Regional Airport. They did a tour and got to hit some balls out at Black Rock Golf Course. Yesterday, they toured the 911 Emergency Communications Center. They went through a water safety course at Marty Snook Pool, and they went to the Ag Expo. So today's their finale with Washington County government, which is participating and receiving a certificate here today. So I'll pass it over to Mr. Hicks.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning. And first of all, I want to say I appreciate your support in this and the time you've delegated to help these young men. And to Brittany, who's been invaluable for what we're trying to achieve, working with fellas between the ages of 12 and 17. Each year, I've been working with a group of just boys to expose them to different aspects of culture. The program amounts to a half day of academics and, well, 2 hours of academics and then 2 hours of a tour or an event of some type. So we typically do a study of languages in addition to academics, math and reading comprehension and things like that. So it's really summer school, but I just haven't told them yet. But the reality is, because there are other things to do, and certainly Brittany has played a real key role in this, and exposing them to different cultures and areas that they have or may never see unless they have this type of opportunity. So it's worked real well, and I just want to tell you, your investment in these young men is greatly appreciated, paid great dividends. We have 13 fellows this year. One is not here, and I just want to give you an example. He's an A+ student. He's a senior in high school. He's taking college courses, and his dream is to be a neurologist. So I was able to connect him with a doctor who has him in his office on Tuesday morning. So the reality is, here's a kid that's still in high school working with a doctor. He puts his tie on every Tuesday and he goes out. Now, what's the dividend? I think the dividend shows up in academics, social skills. It shows up in the community. It shows up in leadership, and you're partnering with us to help change the lives of young men. That's invaluable because, as the government, you're saying we're going to take a vested interest in this. And it may not seem large to you. It's huge to them because you're looking at a kid that may not get the same opportunity. Now, I work with, I want the volunteers to stand, please. Now, I just want you to just give your name and what's your employment history or education, whatever it is. I'm going to start here with you, Ms. Jackie.
My name is Jacqueline Hodgen. I've been a nurse for over 20 years. My name is Jacqueline Hodgen. I've been a nurse for over 20 years. Worked in the respiratory areas of the hospital and people that's on ventilators. But this program has really taught me a lot, and I thank God that nobody's been hurt or injured enough to even have a Band-Aid. And I thank God for that, and I thank God for the opportunity that I've been given to work with these young men.
Hello, I'm Annette Conyers. I am a retired educator, 35 years. It is an opportunity for me to continue to observe the growth and development of these youth into adulthood. And it is something I've always enjoyed doing, so I'm here to continue in that effort.
Hi, I'm Pamela Smiley. I've been in Maryland for 5 years, semi-retired, but 3 of those years I worked in the Maryland County, the Washington County Public Schools as a substitute teacher, and I was grateful for the opportunity this year, to work with this mentoring program. It certainly has been, I'm sure, rewarding for the boys, but as well for me. They've grown, they've learned, as Mr. Hicks has said, they've had an educational opportunity here, as well as the social skills. And it's really been a blessing for all of us here, and we thank God for it.
My name is Mr. McFadden, and I'm a speaker. And I had the opportunity to share with the young fellas some real life street experiences with them and trying to help them and enlighten them about the troubles of the street.
Good morning. My name is Fred McCarg. I'm a retired police officer. I was 30 years with Howard County. I live in West Virginia. Actually, I'm not a Washington County resident. My connection to this county is because I go to Bridge of Life Church at 14 South Potomac Street, and that's where Mr. Hicks convenes these guys 3 times a week. My heart is just the fact that the prayer that they would never see my profession. They would never have contact with somebody like me in any of their days on this earth, that their vision that they're getting through what you facilitate through this county would guide them on a path that they would never see a badge or a gun, or never know the inside of places, because they've been there. They've been taken to the sheriff. They've been talked to by the chief. They get an inside look at the detention center, and that's awesome. I never had that as a child, and I'm grateful that what Mr. Hicks is doing, what he's leading, and being a part of this program. Thank you. Lord bless you guys and gals.
So as you can see, there's a number of people that set their summer aside to help these kids, and will it make a difference? I think absolutely, but don't forget, you're partnering with us to help them be better citizens of Washington County. And I have 2 peer mentors, Jay and Harvey. Stand, please. These are 2 men that have been with me for 3 years, because we always keep someone along that understands the program and helps the other kids, the other new guys. And I appreciate their help. Their family's not here. Both Harvey's parents are educators. One's an engineer, and they're in travels today. But Earl and Maria Wetzel have set their summers aside to help us to develop these young kids. Thank you, fellas. Thank you.
Mr. Hicks, would you join me at the podium for some awards to hand out?
Absolutely.
And I'd like to ask the commissioners and your staff to join us on the floor and congratulate each one as they go by. Commissioners, would you join us? That you have the honors of announcing the names.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
You announce the name and have them come forward. Okay. We're going to begin the awarding of the certificates. As we call your name, come down here to us and run the gauntlet of handshakes. All right, ma'am, please go forward.
Zachary Wright.
Zachary, congratulations to you.
Ty J. Allen.
Congratulations. You're welcome.
Amari Ewing.
Congratulations.
Jonathan Grande,
Congratulations, Jonathan.
Alexi, did I say that right? Grande,
Congratulations.
Henry Grande,
Congratulations.
Elmer Flores. Not here? Okay. Joseph.
Congratulations.
Jazir Denson.
Congratulations. You're welcome.
Kamir Denson.
Congratulations.
Shamir Floyd.
Congratulations.
Harvey Wenzel.
Congratulations.
Makai Jones.
Congratulations. If we now could have all the students in front and the old folks like us in the back, we'll get a team picture here. How's that?
Okay, are we ready? 1, 2, 3. Great. And can we get one of just the children? Great. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Good job, guys.
Stay there. Let me get one.
Take one with you. It's just zoomed in.
Okay.
I got you.
You got me?
Yeah, I got you. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Good job.
Buddy. Yeah, I don't know. Pretty good. Hey, we're gonna go back on our agenda in case someone came in for our citizens' participation, which was scheduled at 10:25. Has anyone come in since 10:25 for citizens' participation? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the county solar facilities overview. Mr. Eichelman, you're up, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good
Andrew
morning.
Eshelman, Director of Public Works. I'm here to give an overview of the county solar facilities. There's been a lot of discussion about solar recently. I wanted to take the opportunity to explain how our facilities function and operate, as well as try to answer any questions to the best of my ability. The county has 4 operational solar facilities with site lease agreements and corresponding power purchase agreements called PPAs. The sites known as Creek, which is at our 40 West landfill site, Resh S1, which is the old landfill, and Rubble 1 and 2, which is at Kemps Mill Park. Each have a 2 megawatt power capacity and are virtual net metering systems. So the net energy generated by these systems accounts for approximately 50% of the county's electricity and demand. We have an additional 3 site leases for solar facilities that were signed in 2015, but those have not been developed or a PPA executed yet. As I mentioned, the solar sites are operated as a virtual net metering system, and what that means is the electricity is generated at these sites. It's then distributed to the energy grid. The county receives a lease payment of 1 penny per kilowatt hour generated from the leasee, and the PPA agreement requires the county to purchase that electricity generated from the seller. And I was here before you 2 weeks ago transferring the ownership of the property or the leases for that from Spear Point Energy, soon to be Clara Cressingham. So that's who we essentially pay, write a check to for the generation of that electricity. The energy rate payment for that to the seller, it started at 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour back in 2015, 2016 when these facilities became operational, and it increases annually at 2.5%. The term for the PPA is 20 years, and it has an automatic 5-year extension, and upon mutual agreement of the parties, up to 2 additional 5-year periods. The energy output generated from these sites is recorded with a solar site master meter. So they have smart meters out at these locations and records that generation. It then gets credited to the county's Potomac Edison eligible accounts. So because we don't actually have a lot of demand at these sites other than what's out there to help run the facilities, we have to track that electricity that's generated in order to distribute it to the meters and the accounts where we do have usage and demand. So the next piece of this is the county has what are called waterfall accounts with Potomac Edison for each solar generating facility that lists each metered account and the ranking to receive available solar generation credits that are applied to the bills. So essentially each 2 megawatt site has a listing of electricity accounts ranked from highest to lowest. So in any given month, say July, where you have high generation, the accounts listed during that month may all receive credits from what is generated. So you essentially go down from the list top to bottom, and at some point one of the accounts is going to be split to where you'll get partial credit. So that's going to vary month to month. Say February, we don't have a lot of generation, we're going to end up receiving less solar credits, and more of those accounts in that waterfall listing will not receive solar credits. So we have those 4 waterfall accounts, and they can be updated each year with the accounts that are applied to those. So the difference between the net cost of the solar electricity generated and the utility company's standard offer service rate, which is what you normally pay if you look at your residential bill for electricity, kind of the same thing, there's industrial commercial rates for that, and what are called subsequent transmission and distribution charges. So there's additional category of charges that deal with the distribution and the cost to transmit that electricity. So the difference between those determines the relative cost benefit of the solar facilities. So to explain the revenue, expenses, and the net value and the taxes from these facilities, I've broken down how these agreements were structured so you can see where we have money coming in, where we have potential to generate additional revenue, and what we're paying out of our pocket for the electricity, and then what that kind of all means in the end. So one of the first fees that we get, or it was a one-time payment, was an activation fee. So when these facilities came online, there was a $25,000 activation fee that was paid to the county at startup. So between the 4 sites, we received $100,000 for startup. The next eligible category is called renewable energy fee. We haven't received any of those to date, and what the renewable energy fee is, it's essentially what's called a solar renewable energy credit, or an SREC. And an SREC is a tradable commodity. Because the state of Maryland has renewable portfolio standards and they incentivize solar electricity, they have essentially created a market where different energy vendors like Potomac Edison have to show that they have renewable energy in their portfolio. So what they do is they don't actually, in many cases, generate that themselves. They buy these credits from producers. So they're purchasing these credits, and they get to count that in their portfolio to meet their requirements. The state sets a alternative fee if those different energy providers don't meet that percentage. So that kind of caps the market, and these things vary state to state that have them. So right now in Maryland, the SREC market is $50 for one SREC, and one SREC equals 1 megawatt hour of electricity. They have fluctuated greatly as the market changes and as the state has changed its renewable energy standards. That's something that recently Maryland changed, where we went from, I believe, 2.5% solar to now we're looking at 14.5% by 2030. When that happened, the market immediately jumped from about $9 or $10 to $50 per share. Other states where they don't have available land and resources much, like New Jersey, DC, they have SREC markets around $200. So what that means for us is right now nothing, because until those SRECs reach $200 a share, we don't get anything. Once it is above that, we get 5% of that SREC value. So SRECs, you create them by generating electricity. So as the meter's running, every time you generate 1 megawatt hour of electricity, you essentially create an SREC that then can be sold. So we have received a statement of the sale of those over the history up to this point, but they have not reached the threshold to where we have received any income from that. So the next category then is the energy rent revenue. I mentioned that earlier. It's a penny per kilowatt hour generated. So up there on the screen are the generation numbers going back to 2016 all the way through year to date. So year to date, we've received about $51,000 from these lease payments, and we're tracking about $100,000 per year from that source of revenue. The next line there in category is the expense. So I mentioned we have a power purchase agreement, and that is what obligates the county to purchase this electricity at the PPA rate in this agreement. So essentially, this is where money is leaving county accounts and going to purchase this electricity. So currently, we're spending just under 2018 was $950,000, are what we have essentially paid out. At that time, it was to Spearpoint Energy for this electricity. Then moving to the next category is where I try to do my best to capture what this value is, because essentially at that point, once it goes out, we pay a fixed rate for it. It comes back to our electricity counts, and it's not assigned a standard offer service rate. It just essentially, when you look at the electricity bill, the way Potomac Edison structures it, there's a reading amount from a given date to the current date, and then a net, similar to you would see on your homeowner's bill. So whenever those credits are being applied, it's showing essentially a difference of 0, knowing that we get the credit for what was generated. We've met with Potomac Edison. They've started giving us quarterly statements so we can verify that the amount that we're paying and those kilowatt hours is being tracked back to our accounts. The county has about 8 pages of electricity accounts, so there are many, and it is a lot to track, but we have gotten that information to verify that what is being generated, we are receiving credit for. So what I did for conversion of production credit value to standard offer service rate. So I looked at a number of our standard offer service rates for electricity across the host of different accounts. And that's if you look at your electricity bill, you will see what those rates are. You have a residential rate if you're looking at your house, and it may be you pay 7 and may pay 8.5 cents. It fluctuates period to period, and they alert you on your bill what that rate is. So essentially what's happening is we're paying one rate for electricity, and then it's being credited back, and it's offsetting what we would have paid otherwise. So this is where I tried to capture what that cost would be otherwise, because on one hand, we're paying right now 9.13 cents for electricity. We're receiving credit back to supplant what we would have paid, say 7 or 8 cents for the same thing on our accounts. Now, the other piece of this, which is difficult to put a number to, is that lower category of costs, which deals with transmission, distribution, and generation. So we do receive a benefit through the solar credits for that category of expenses as well. It's a little bit tougher to quantify that, and that's the next step we're working with Potomac Edison on, is to capture what the full value of that category of cost is. So when you take the net difference, and like I said, this is the caveat of not factoring in those distribution transmission credits, which there is a value associated with them. Right there up on the table is kind of the difference between the net cost. And we can try to look at individual accounts, but there's a lot of fluctuation given month to month, even year to year, as those accounts are either on the waterfall listing, receiving those credits, they're off. So the best way to kind of capture this at the broadest level is looking at the aggregate numbers, which we've been working with Sarah and her office on, to see how does this all wash out in the end as to what we're paying for electricity, which we currently, our line item across all county is about $2 million.
Yeah, that's correct. About 2 million, 2.1 million. And you know, our electricity cost has increased steadily over the past couple years. You know, in 2016, it was 1.8 million. Today, we're looking at 2.1 million. So we have had some slight increase in net costs that, you know, we feel from the county expense side of the house. But I think Andrew's put together a decent picture for you of how complicated the estimation on, you know, this can be, and all the different factors and components that are part of it. So it is difficult to quantify with all the different rates every other month. And the number of accounts that we have.
Yes, and to the point, I mean, some of the accounts, like our wastewater treatment plant, is a very large energy user. It effectively takes up one solar facility into its own. That account actually has variable hourly demand pricing. So the electricity rate even varies depending on when it's being used in a given hour, in a given day. So there's a certain level of optimization that you can do to kind of maximize the rates and what you're paying in different places. And so that's something that really, I'd say we've gotten into in the past 6 months and looking at that, and we're going to continue to look at this moving forward over the next year to get a handle on how this washes out. We've done a lot of facility upgrades over at the treatment plant side. Exactly. And so we're kind of reestablishing what our new baseline is in some regards, and getting this information from Potomac Edison. We did meet with them. They did admit that they do not have the best billing system to provide this information up front. It does not show up on an individual electricity invoice. You have to go seeking this information and then provide it to us. So I think we'll continue to work with them to improve that system. I think we probably aren't the only ones in this position. And so certainly it's something, as the renewable energy standards continue to promote this type of electricity, more people are going to be in the situation where they're going to know on their electricity bill exactly what's happening. But the way it's structured as a virtual net metering system, rather than a homeowner who has, solar panels on their roof where it's essentially 1 meter system and the usage is coming off right where it's being produced. It's a little different with a virtual net metering system.
Yeah, and Andrew mentioned something valuable when looking at the cost year over year. It is important to consider the changes that have happened in the county, especially out at Conococheague wastewater treatment plant.
So in terms of where I'm at right now, and this just isn't me, I guess I got the draw to explain this, but this is really a countywide effort, and the different department and division directors who in many cases are responsible for paying those electricity bills and seeing this. We're going to continue to monitor this energy demand as well as the production. And I talked about monitoring this because then we can go back and update those waterfall listings to make sure that we're putting the accounts that are maybe going to give us the most benefit and rate of return on those, because we do not pay a consistent standard offer service rate across the county. There could be some bills where we pay 5.5 cents. There could be other bills that we pay, 8.5 cents. It does fluctuate location to location.
We want to look to maximize that.
And so we want to maximize that. And as far as other just in general energy and cost reduction actions that we've done, we're going to be back to participating in the proposal for bulk electricity purchase with Washington County Public Schools and other Western Maryland municipal entities, and I think that bid actually opens later this week. So we'll be back with you for that, and that'll essentially be for the remaining piece of the pie that isn't covered by the solar facilities or city light department accounts, because they are an entity onto their own. But we do have a remaining portion of the pie that essentially we pay at a standard offer service rate. We've also talked before about the industrial grade energy audit request for proposal that's out and the potential for ESCO services moving forward, as well as we've participated in the Potomac Edison Small Business Direct Install Program for no cost lighting upgrades. It's something that we started here several months ago, where through the program that we essentially already pay anyway through our electric bills, there's energy upgrade efficiency programs that we then get that money through Potomac Edison and their vendor for lighting upgrades, LED lighting upgrades that we can put in our facilities that'll receive long-term savings in terms of what we pay for energy usage. And some of those can be 30 to 70% reduction in lighting alone. So I totaled up the work orders that we currently have signed through that program, and just the cost associated with the lighting fixtures alone represents about $200,000. That does not count ongoing potential energy savings that we could receive from changing out our light fixtures to more efficient LEDs. So I guess that's my best attempt in a nutshell to explain, I think, what is a very complicated system and how these solar facilities operate and what it means for us. So if there's any questions, I'll try to do my best to answer those.
Commissioners, questions?
Yeah, for me, I mean, there was a lot of dazzle there. I'm not going to say I understand what you're talking about or anything like that there, but what I was kind of hopeful, because I know when we got involved in these solar facilities, I know I sat here and I heard that 50%, or I won't say percentage, but a large percentage of our energy cost for the operate the county with would be absorbed by these solar projects. So for me, I'd like to know how much money are we receiving? How much has our light bill been reduced by in dollars? I understand dollars and cents. I don't understand all this dazzle, and I mean, there's a lot of information here, and I think we all know what confusion means.
I think
Government gives a lot of information, or people selling you stuff, and it's all confusing. I think we know, at least I know what that means to me, but I'd like to know if the county is benefiting or not.
I think it's
And if
important
so,
to note,
in terms of dollars.
Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong on this information, but the county is generating approximately half of its energy from solar. I think sometimes
Okay, so generating energy from solar, is it costing us to?
we
Yes,
pay
it's
for
costing.
that
We
energy.
pay for that.
For that.
We
Yes.
pay for it. And I think that's something that's a misunderstanding among you know, a lot of people that if you generate the solar, you don't pay for it, but that's not the case. You do
Not with the
pay
net
for
metering
it.
system. You pay
Sounds
for
to me
it.
like everybody's making money and benefiting, but the taxpayers.
So we are paying
We don't own the solar panels, right?
No, it's a lease.
So if we own the panels, then we wouldn't be paying for it because we would own the panels and it would be free. But since we don't own the panels, we've got to pay for it. Just like if you had a Vivint solar on your house, you don't own the panels, so you're paying Vivint instead of paying Potomac Edison.
Correct. So if we own the panels, it would be, you'd have the upfront cost, and then you'd essentially have a payback period to where you're going to have your, expenses to operate and pay back what your initial purchase price was. And then after that financial analysis, then in future years, you would conceivably just be making income.
Now, on this, I know you said you didn't have it, but note we're in this calculation is no generation, no transmission, distribution credits. I know when I look at my Potomac Edison bill, that's a huge portion of the bill. So I mean that's. Are you saying that's a significant savings that we're receiving?
There are savings. So I brought a couple sample reports or invoices along, and so even on bills where we show essentially zero energy usage in the difference line item, we still get billed for generation, transmission, distribution charges. It's at a reduced rate as opposed to a month that doesn't have those assigned. But going back to trying to simplify this in a way that distills it to what does it actually mean. So to Terry's point, I can look at the net value table that I prepared up there, and I could say, well, just trying to look at the top portion of that bill, the standard offer service rate, we're paying in essence $100,000 more than if we didn't have it. That's not the entire picture because it doesn't factor in those transmission distribution charges. We haven't moved there yet, partly because I don't know if Potomac Edison is there yet to provide that information, but it is part of the equation. So to go back to, are we receiving, are we paying money or are we getting money back? I think to Sarah's point, in the aggregate sense, even though we know we have improvements and additions and things that have increased our energy usage, I think even removing the wastewater accounts from that equation, it still is an increase.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate statement, and I think what you've tried to do on the screen with the net value is hopefully a good way to present the data instead of just looking at the numbers, the figures of what the expenditure is year over year of electric. So up there you can see for 2018 that $99,000 figure. Like Andrew said, that doesn't take into consideration some of the credits. So, that figure may come down slightly, maybe 25%, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of this is in flux because the SREC does represent a potential income that we are not receiving now. Because it's only 5%, it's not going to be a large number, but it is an additional number. A lot of this is also tied to how is the cost of standard offer service electricity going to track compared to what we're paying. The agreement that was signed has a 2.5% escalation in it. So unfortunately, if one way of looking at it is if the standard offer service rate that a general customer pays doesn't increase at that rate or greater, then we stand to lose potentially even more in future years. Now, the overall production of the solar facilities will decline gradually, and that's something that's been talked about when you've heard these pilot arrangements as to what's the overall life expectancy. Now, what I've seen is over 25-year period, I don't know how our numbers will shake out, but industry-wide, you're looking at maybe 85% of what the original capacity is. So you'll see some reduction in overall production, but yet our overall rate will continue to increase linearly.
Andrew, I'll be the second honest person in the room. I understood about 30% of what you said. I'm sort of dollars and cents type of guy. Okay, I see we're basically, according to your presentation, we're not the most efficient use, or it's not the most efficient way. We don't have much of a choice, do we? How can we tailor? Why is this presentation? Okay, you just enlightened us. What can we do about it? You know, it's.
Well,
You're just telling
the
us
only
we're
way,
losing money.
I mean, this came up when we were talking with, Kirk's office and the attorneys about the sale of the lease. And so really, the only option that the county would have if we want to get out of it is we would need to purchase the facilities. And there's a process in the contract that talks about how that is, valued and agreed upon. But it's a long-term agreement that was signed in 2015. I wasn't involved in that. Sarah wasn't. So I don't know what the circumstances and what was presented at that time, other than to say there are a lot of different ways to structure these things. You could put all your eggs in one basket and say, we only want to get a lease payment. That way we know we're not, losing out. You could structure it to say we want to, have it all on the PPA side where we want to reduce the rate that we're paying for electricity. You can put it in these different baskets. They put some in the activation fee to put some money there. So I can't answer how
Yeah, the
they
bottom
came
line is
about,
we
the
have a
reason
lease, right?
why it was structured this way, other than this is what was done and this is kind of how it's operating, and what we're trying to do to work within that agreement to make sure that we're receiving, the most benefit from it and reducing any potential costs from it. Now, it is true. I mean, this was signed 2015. Solar facilities and their costs have come down a lot in 5 years. So I can't say that I don't know if we would have got a better deal. I don't know that this was put out for a proposal to get multiple offers, but this is the deal at the time. And when we asked this question, even with Spear Point, they said, well, at the time, this was competitive offer. That's their word. I can't answer if we would have received a better deal. I can tell you that if you did this today, you would get a better deal because the market has changed and the costs have changed.
Well, daggone, if I'd have bought a computer 20 years ago, I'd have got a better deal today than I did 20 years ago. So it sounds like you're sort of crying over spilled milk here. We did what was in front of us, or someone did, and it doesn't decide. You'd have to see figures would be beneficial to buy it, which I doubt it'd be beneficial to buy the fields. That'd probably scare all of us. So I'm still trying to figure out what your presentation's about.
I think it's just being transparent about, there was questions about, well, what does it really mean? I mean, if Terry says 50%, is it that it's reducing our electricity costs 50% because we have electric? That's not really how this agreement is structured. Like you said, there's a lot of different places where there's money coming in and going out. And when you pull it all together and look at the net, this is how it functions.
Do you have any more questions, Terry?
I actually have a question, but it's really not for this project, but it's on solar itself. So in here, because I know under the pilots and all those, if they're under 2 megawatts, that's kind of the power generating capacity for the PSC.
Yes.
So these are all 2 megawatts, but I'm sitting here looking at them, and they're 3 megawatt, 2.6, 2.7.
So some of that is the difference between power and energy. So I'll try to do my best to explain this. So power is going to just be in megawatts, kilowatts. That's the potential to generate energy. Energy in this case is going to be in the rate. So it's going to have an hour component to it, kilowatt hours, and that's the rate that energy is used. So they're really two different things. A 2 megawatt facility doesn't mean it's going to generate 2 megawatt hours of electricity. Power and energy. So
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
I have a quick question, a request really, because if you have the information, great, but hoping you or someone could get the information for us. Andrew, while we were sitting here, I emailed a link to a Herald Mail article from almost exactly 5 years ago today, August 18th, 2014, that talked about of the statewide capacity of 184 megawatts at that time. Washington County was producing collectively, including our projects, which are mentioned, and what people have on their roofs, 33.8 megawatts, or 18% of the state's total solar energy generation. I'm just wondering if we can get those same figures today, 5 years later, to see where we are, both megawatt numbers and percentage that Washington County makes up for the
Okay.
entire state. I would find that useful and
I
interesting.
think statewide, I'll confirm this, I think it's 1,000 megawatts is where the capacity is at right now. And to put this in perspective of what this means for the renewable energy standards and how it's really going to be a seismic shift in energy generation in the state. So right now, the state is about at 3% solar. They're supposed to get to 14.5% in 2030. That's just in the solar carve-out area. When you consider renewable energy in its totality, it's supposed to be 50%. Currently, the state is at about 12.5%. So somewhere there's going to need to be 37.5% increase in renewable energy in the state. And when you look at what those resources are, it's hydro, it's biomass, it's wind, and it's solar. Other than offshore locations or on tops of mountains, we're not great for wind. Hydro are very difficult to get permitted and approved. We already have some of those facilities. So I mean, my opinion would be that the solar is really going to have to ramp up in order to meet that goal, because it is a very challenging goal statewide to
Andrew?
meet that increase.
Does the county receive any type of consideration from the state that if it produces more energy, if it produces more solar, do we get any? Does our grant application on other projects become more considerable? Is there any type of credit beyond the credit that you've mentioned in the bill?
Well, I mean, there are tax credits out there, but since we are already a tax exempt organization, I don't think they really apply to us. So for the homeowner out there, the potential investor, there are a host of opportunities out there, either upfront initial incentives, grants, the ongoing SRECs that they get to help offset those operation costs. So there is a market in place to incentivize that. But for the county, I don't know that those same incentives, we don't need a tax reduction if we're not paying taxes to begin with.
Nothing that I'm aware of. Good thought. I'm not.
It's certainly good, not to say that there couldn't be initiatives that come out of Annapolis to say each county, and we've heard this, through MACO. I think there's been some feelers out there about making some of these things mandatory to say your buildings must reach this energy efficiency, your energy, must come from clean, renewable energy. It is conceivable that could happen, and then we'd already be in a position to have those resources, but today, I don't think there's anything.
Mr. Eichmann, commissioners, are there any other questions? We have some people waiting for that.
Yeah, just trying to keep this to my level of understanding. I'd like to know what we spend on current electricity rates in Washington, what our bills are, and how much does solar save us? How much would our electric bill be if we didn't have these solar projects?
I think that's what he's trying to get at, the net
Well,
solar.
no, I want to know in dollars.
Well, that's it.
That's the
If you look at the
100,000.
net solar generated compared to SOS rates, so it cost us, basically it's saying $99,000 in 2018, but then that's not counting the no generation transmission distribution credits. So it could be $25,000,
That's looking at
$30,000.
a large piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
It's
It's a lot
trying to
less than what I
capture.
thought we were going to receive when we entered into those agreements.
Yeah, no, but I was just, since you were asking for the numbers, I was just trying to show you where the numbers
Andrew,
were.
you have your assignment. Any other questions? All right, let's move on to the next item. Mr. Moser.
And while Todd shows up, I'd like to credit Andrew for a very complex topic, to his credit, and working with Sarah on that to her credit as well. Very complex topic to present.
Mr. Moser, would you introduce the topic?
Good morning. Lease agreement for the Dolman Black Heritage Museum. Todd Moser, Real Property Administrator, joining me. Andrew Eschman, Director of Public Works. I would also like to recognize that several members of the museum are also in attendance today. The Dolman Black Heritage Museum has proposed leasing part of the second floor of 3335 West Washington Street as a temporary location for the museum. The space at 3335 West Washington Street will provide a museum a location to display exhibits for public viewing, as well as continue fundraising, applying for appropriate grants, and working towards the goal of moving into their permanent location. One of the grants a museum intends to apply for requires a museum to have a physical location open to the public for 25 hours per week for a consecutive 2-year period. The proposed lease will include the following. The initial term will include a 2-year lease with DBHM paying $1 per year. Unless a 30-day notice is given by the county or DBHM, the lease will be considered as extended and binding in all of its provisions on a year-to-year basis after the expiration of the initial term. Either party, the county or DBHM, has a right to terminate the lease, giving 60-day written notice. The space consists of approximately 3,100 square feet and will not include the Veterans Affairs Office or the County Information Technology Training Center. Museum hours shall be limited to only during days and hours when the county offices are open for business, Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., not including any county holidays observed by Washington County government. All such requests of extended hours by DBHM for additional hours shall be made at least 15 days in advance. Before agreeing to additional hours, issues such as building security, compensation for county staff overtime, and access shall be addressed. DBHM shall not make any renovations to the leased premises without first obtaining written permission of the county. The county will make no warranties or representations as to the suitability of the leased premise for storing, maintaining, preserving, or protecting museum exhibits, artifacts, documents, or other items in any way. The county agrees to furnish hot and cold water, heat, air conditioning, adequate plumbing facilities, reasonable repair services, maintenance for exterior premises, snow removal, electricity, and reasonable services. And DBHM shall fully disclose to the county any and all applications, requests, proposals, or other efforts by the museum to seek and obtain funding in form of grants, loans, or other financial assistance from any source. Are there any questions or comments?
Commissioners, there's a recommended motion to approve. Are there any questions first, or I'd entertain a motion to approve?
I'd like to thank staff and Dolman Black Heritage Museum staff for putting everything together and working through all this process. And I think it's going to be an outstanding project